What's going on YouTube? Q back here again with another video for you. In today's video, I'm here to talk about just being front wheel drive, kill the fun of the Integra Type S, and that goes for the Civic Type R as well. So I've seen a few comments and they're saying they would just not consider this car just because it's front wheel drive. And I'm here to tell you that that's not fair. You should give it a fair chance at being a fun car. And I do admit that there are some things that front wheel drives cannot do and that rear wheel drive cars are better than, or all wheel drive cars can do. But you shouldn't write off the Integra Type S, or any Integra for that matter, just because it's front wheel drive. I'm here to tell you why today. And before I get into the video, I'd like to give a shout out to the men of culture. Got Blueprint 1 LE, 100 Gang Nate, and Race Car Friends. With that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, browse the channel. Let's jump into it. Oh, look at here. I got a fresh wash on here. So my copper wheels actually look copper today. They're not black all around. So these boys look like a penny. No JC. And oh my God, my rotors look rusty down here. Hopefully that fall off or something when I come to hitting the brakes. But yeah, we looking good right here. Fully clean. Got the wipers in maintenance mode. But let's get behind the wheel so I can show and demonstrate to y'all why front wheel drive should not be a deal breaker, especially in the Integra Type S. I too was one of the rear wheel drive elitists. At a certain point, I wouldn't even consider a car if it had front wheel drive. Minor exception with my Fiesta ST. But every other front wheel drive car, I honestly glossed over it because I felt cars should be rear wheel drive. So a lot of my olders, my OGs, my dad, my uncles, they had rear wheel drive cars, big muscle car V8s. And front wheel drive is just something we never adapted. Not in no spirited car, but then Honda with their magnificent engineering, they came through and they put they sauce on these Integras and Civic Type R's. So these cars are a ton of fun, but it's a different way that you have fun in here. Still just overall a very fun car, but let me explain. So in rear wheel drive cars, if you just get on it at any given time, you start slipping. In front wheel drive cars, more often than not, you are gripping. Woo. And this car just goes and goes like slippage, with the exception from a dig at 0 miles an hour. You will slip there if you have traction control off. But normally, everywhere else, I am just going. Even on the track, this car did not slip at all. I rarely came across understeer, and this car will understeer, but if you know what you're doing and how to drive, you will not experience understeer. So I'm going to say that front wheel drive cars, and I'm just learning this myself because I've driven front and rear wheel drive cars on the track, at the limits you got to be a lot more careful with rear wheel drive. That's like the advanced mode. In front wheel drive, it's different. Like when I was with the Topher in his Civic Type R, he was just going, and when you get into the curves, you just eased off with the accelerator. And then once you hit the apex and are exiting the corner, that's when you max into the accelerator. So you can go coming out of a turn, but going into a turn, if you get on it too hard, that's when you start to understeer. And understeer is weak sauce, since the car just starts to get off of its trajectory and starts going away, so you just slow down. So it's kind of instinctual how you correct it. You just simply slow down. But rear wheel drive cars are prone to oversteer, and oversteer is a lot more dangerous. As you guys seen when I was in the M2 on the track, I got into it on the turn too hard and the back end came out and swung on me. Thankfully I was able to correct it, but if you don't know what you're doing, that could lead to a crash, and you don't want that. Front wheel drive cars, they are generally lighter than their rear wheel drive counterparts. Like, they're not apples to apples, but a car like this, we'll compare it to like a BMW 3 Series for the size wise. That car is going to weigh, well, in this new generation, like 3,800 pounds, and that's huge. This car is only a little bit over 3,200 pounds, and for a car this size, it's not a whole lot more cars that is this size that handles this well, and they put the steering inputs into it. So thankfully, with the Honda engineers, they fine-tune these front-wheel drive cars to the point like it's not a whole lot left to do with. They're almost perfect in terms of what you get out of a driving experience. Shifter is great, steering is great, suspension is great. All these inputs is great, and a lot of automotive journalists compare it to Porsche, and I don't have that experience to compare it to Porsche. But notice this turn right here. I get into it, I ease off the accelerator, and I just let the car carry its weight around this turn, and it does its thing. When I come out of the curve, then I get on the accelerator, and then I'm just able to go, and it just goes like nobody's business. So that's where these cars are fun, coming out of those turns. And man, the way these cars, these are light on the toes, and I've driven a lot of cars. This is probably, for the size, it's hands down the lightest car on its toes to me. And the suspension is so great. So I got another curve coming up. Let me drop a gear. And this curve ain't that big, so I can just get into it however much I want to. Let me put on waves. You never know, my blue friends might be out here. And on the streets, my A-Spec Integra, that thing was a blast to drive because of the limits were so much lower. I was able to just drive the car at its limits all the time. And that was such a fun time to me. But where front wheel drive is not as fun, when you overwhelm the front tires with power, because the weight distribution is off. It's like 60% of the weight in the front, 40% in the rear. That makes for less than enjoyable. They're still enjoyable, but it's not the most enjoyable to have a weight distribution like that. You want to be in a front engine drive bias car. You want 50-50. That's perfect weight distribution. So the weight is balanced. And that's what you get out of a car like BMW. And a lot of BMWs have 50-50. And that's hard. It's very difficult to get a car at 50-50 weight distribution. And that's why BMWs cost as much as they do. Because you can get a car like a Mustang, but it'll be, Mustangs and Camaros are like 54% front weight bias. So the dynamics can be a little off, but they make for it in other places like the magnetic ride control. One thing front wheel drive cars don't do is drift. You can drift them, but this car, or the Type R, I know for sure that car does lift off oversteer. So once you're at the limits on the track, you start to slide and you lift off the accelerator, the rear end will come out, but then it naturally rotates itself back to a neutral position. So it's quite safe. In this car, I do wish front wheel drive cars could drift, or at least had a handbrake. That's why I'm down in Honda for not putting a handbrake in this car, because it would have been a lot better with one. But going around corners in this car, as long as you don't overwhelm those front tires, like I just hit that turn right there, I was getting into the accelerator. What you want to do for a front wheel drive car, you want to have that speed before you hit the corner. And you probably want to do this in all other cars, but definitely in front wheel drive, this is something I noticed on my own. Like you want to carry that momentum into the turn, or else like just adding the gas. The physics behind it is the front tires are doing all the work. They're propelling the car forward and they're guiding the car, and that's work. So it becomes overwhelmed, and then you lose grip that way. So what you want to do is just let the car, just guide the car. Don't want to propel the car through a turn. That's when you start to understeer. Just about to hit a couple of these turns hard up here. Whoop, over one of the front tires, started to slip. Torque steer comes into play. Forgot to mention that. That's about the worst part of front wheel drive. Torque steer. Came up on another front wheel drive car too fast. They can't handle the car like mine. So this car is in a different league when it comes to front wheel drive. You got to put some respect on these Hondas, especially people that modify them. They get big power, and they can surprise you with all the power they can get on these engines. These things are pretty robust, and what they're able to do with the stock block on these, you can get some huge power from these boys. So let me talk about torque steer for a minute if you don't know what it is. Torque steer is when you jab on the accelerator and the car uses this torque to steer the car. This car is kind of predictable, but I had an Acura TL, 2004 Acura TL. That car had some violent torque steer. Fiesta ST had torque steer as well. Not as bad as that TL, but it'll jerk the steering wheel in a direction at random, and it's unpredictable. Shout out to Race Car Frank, I know he witnessed that with his Mazda Speed 3. Those cars are notorious for torque steer, but if you can hold on to it and predict which way it's gonna go, or just be prepared, you'll be fine. All right, I'm gonna show you the proper way to hit these curves right here. Let me downshift a couple gears, 3 gears actually. So you want to carry this momentum. So I'm gonna speed up till I get to the turn and just let the car carry itself. Another front wheel drive car to ruin my fun, but that's what you want to do. Let the momentum of the car carry you through the turn instead of accelerating through it. You accelerate when you're coming out of the turn, like where this point would be right here. This car is going very slow, but he ain't got a front wheel drive car like mine, so it's expected. If he had one of these, he could have hit the speed twice as high as mine. I'd be a little bit scared and timid to do it. Then when you want to accelerate from like in a straight line, you just go. Like these front wheel cars grip. I just went out on the cruise yesterday just to get to know the car and what it's capable of doing. On the highway, just downshifting and going, this car really shines at that. Like it'll pin you back a little bit. It'll surprise you how fast it is. Especially those turns too. Like it really surprises me in the turns. Like it'll take a turn just with the ease, and you'll know when it's about to give out. Cause once those tires start screeching and squealing, you ease off a little bit, and that's when it tends to lift off understeer, and it'll help you get through the turn. So that's a mechanical marvel. That's engineering brilliance right there. How Honda / Acura engineered these cars to do. And I might need to get me a thicker sway bar in the rear to make this car do that more. I still haven't experienced that myself, because I still had traction control on. Did I have it all the way? No, I didn't do that pedal dance on that track, but working my way up to it, I reduced it, I believe. So that's my spiel on front wheel drive cars. Are they the most fun? They can be, depending on how you want to drive it, but I feel like rear wheel drive is more fun more of the time and more dangerous. All wheel drive depends on the car to split those hairs. There's a lot of cars that are all wheel drive, they do understeer as well. They're prone to understeer, and that takes away the fun. But as long as they can rotate and let you play a little bit, those are fun cars. Like I said, just know how to handle a front wheel drive car. I will not write this vehicle off as a fun to drive car just because it's front wheel drive. It's just different. You got to know what you're playing with, know how the car was made to play, and then that way you can take advantage of it and have the most fun that you can in your brand new Integra Type S. Now I do want to say I wish this car was all-wheel drive, because Honda makes some really good all-wheel drive systems out there. Super handling all-wheel drive for the Acuras, and they did not put it on this. But if you want to step up to the TLX Type S, it's got all-wheel drive, and sadly they don't have a manual on that, because I would have went with that car if it did have a manual. That's mid-size sedan, manual, all-wheel drive. That would have been up my alley. But that car weighs 4,200 pounds to be a mid-size, and this car is almost as big as it on the interior. So yeah, but they did it to keep the weight down. And then this is a clone of a Civic, so there you have it. Got to use the Civic tools and Civic engineering that they got on there. So that's what I'm going to leave you all with today. Go love on the front wheel drive car today, and don't call it fail wheel drive, because it is not fail wheel drive unless you're trying to do burnouts, because I have done rear wheel or reverse burnouts in the snow doing donuts that way. It just looks stupid, but hey, I love doing my burnouts and I love drifting. I had to do what I had to do. That's all I got for you all in today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell, browse this channel, and I'll catch you all in the next one.